I'd like to deliver my warm welcome to you to be with us here at the moment of the evening. I'm Ebru Ölmez from Ministry of Environment and Urbanization and Climate Change. I'm urban planner holding master degree on urban policy planning, working for the ministry 24 years, and today acting as a facilitator of this session, but also one of the panelists of this session. Ladies and gentlemen, today we will elaborate various dimensions of adaptation approaches with three distinctive panelists. I will briefly present them to you, but also kindly requesting from them to introduce themselves by indicating their specialization areas before they start. Let me introduce our panelists. First panelist, Ms. Aynur Demir from Aksaray University, Associated Professor, and her presentation is about the impact of the climate change on biodiversity and innovative approaches. Probably we will hear from her something about nature-based solutions as well. Please take floor, Ms. Demir.
Thank you.
Is something wrong? Okay.
My subject of climate change on biodiversity and innovative approaches. Climate change affects all living things on Earth and changes the balance of nature, while the what happened?
Special. What's the problem? Our connection or technical problems? If we have cut the second panelist, okay. I'm sure as soon as possible, Ms. Demir will deliver their presentation. So we can pass the second panelist and then turn back Ms. Demir again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is it possible? Right?
Not.
We lost our internet connections as well.
Maybe,
okay.
maybe climate change.
Oh.
Who's the second panelist?
I'm not sure. Maybe Duygu.
Yeah, sure.
What I can take if you want.
That's okay. I can jump in, Professor. I have to show my screen, so I'm going to share my screen if you permit me. Okay.
But nothing. Okay, we got it.
Oops, sorry. Can I start?
No problem for me, but we have to ask the moderator. Still they are recording, but nobody is doing something.
Maybe asking our excuses from our panelists and, you know, cancel our event. Is it possible, Elif?
It's okay.
If we couldn't manage to overcome the technical problems, we may reschedule our program, you know, events in another day.
No.
Okay.
No, we are ready actually. Just
we can go ahead. The online people, I think.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Works.
Okay, I think.
Okay. Please continue your presentation.
Climate change affects all living things on Earth and changes the balance of nature, while the deterioration of this balance causes changes and transformations for all living elements. It also means serious losses in human welfare and functions in terms of biodiversity. I'm very lucky.
Do we have internet connection? We lost. It seems we lost the internet connections and lost the other panelists.
No, we are here actually. We're
so,
here.
This event destroyed itself because of the technical problems.
Can I ask something? Why don't we go ahead and give our presentations? I'm sure it's going to be
never
fixed.
Been perfect to breaking the ice.
Do you hear us?
What do you think, Elif?
Do you hear us? Do you hear us?
We couldn't get the moderator name actually. Did you get her name? Do you go?
No, I couldn't. No. I'm trying to write to her.
Oh yeah, you can use chat.
Hi.
I hope they're not gonna have postponed for another time.
I don't have time for that. This had been quite a bit for me. I'm just too busy. I'd rather talk my 10 minutes and they should record it.
Yeah, I think they stopped recording too. Can you check? I checked. Oh, no, they are recording. They're recording.
Hı.
Yeah, you can.
Hocam ne kadar ders veriyorsunuz? Herhalde siz artık vermiyorsunuz belki de.
Ben veriyorum ya. Ders vermeyi çok seviyorum.
Sahi mi? Kaç tane veriyorsunuz?
Şu anda 4 derse giriyorum.
Oh hocam. Hiç şikayet etmeyeyim ben o zaman.
Ama tabii bizim yıllardır verdiğimiz dersler olunca
Doğru.
hmm,
Belki kitaplarınız vardır o konuda.
yani ekonomi kitabım var.
Oldu mu? Okay.
Tamam.
Okay.
The
Son
problem,
kararımız mı oldu mu artık?
the problem fixed. I hope
Okay.
we can continue without a problem. Please
Okay.
take the floor again.
Hocam
Deliver
siz
your presentation.
paylaşımınızı
Disclaimer.
durdurursanız orada belki gelir.
Tamam.
Isn't working.
It doesn't work.
No, doesn't work. Oh, still we have to.
Gitmediğimiz iyi olmuş. Biz buradan konuşacağız, gidenler konuşamayacak.
Hocam
Here's
ben
an icebreaker for you.
Tekrar değil. Siz mi değiştireceksiniz?
I am teaching engineering economics to civil engineering department.
So you may
Ah.
direct it next, and
Okay.
you may continue.
Tamam. Tamam. Ha, tamam geçiyor mu? Tamam. Tamam.
Biz o
teşekkür
zaman şöyle ben yoluma gideyim.
Climate change affect biodiversity. We know biodiversity occurred 4 elements: gen, species, ecosystems, and functional diversity. Climate change affect these all elements different way. For example, change invasive species, species losses, change of phenology, change in adaptation, resistance in habitat. How this impact on genetic diversity? The effects at the genetic level depends on whether the species can adapt to changing climatic conditions. Living things adapt to changing conditions genetically through mutation. However, if the change is rapid, genetic adaptation becomes difficult. It may lead to evolutionary adaptation in the species. Another effect area, species diversity. There is a significant and rapid decline in the birds' species diversity due to climate change. It is worrying that the climate pressure on species and their populations living in vulnerable to and fragile ecosystems has reached devastating levels. Studies have revealed that there have been great losses in the population species in the last 50 years. About 38% of these losses occurred in terrestrial species and 36% in marine species. We see that what threatens the life of existing species and loses species. 33,000 species in IUC and red list endangered category. It accounts for 27% all of the identified species. 364 endangered species and subspecies in this list are from Turkey. Climate change affect another important area, phenological change. Phenological changes are the change that occurred in the breeding, bedding, feeding, hibernation, reproductive, mating, and migration behaviors. this change depends on the climatic events such as temperature, wind, humidity, and precipitation. Studies have shown that spring phenologies advanced by 2.3 to 5.1 days per decade in marine, freshwater, and terrestrial ecosystems. For example, the Galapagos mockingbird showed a decrease in reproductive behavior with increasing temperature. Another example, caretta caretta, the sex of caretta caretta offspring changes depending on the stand temperature in the nest. The effects of climate change on plant phenology are more evident. Recently, phenological process start approximately 3 days earlier in spring in the northern hemisphere. This increases biomass production in areas where temperature is a limiting factor for plant growth. From 1959 to 1993 in some parts of North America, lilacs bloomed 1.8 days earlier, while in the Western United States, honeysuckle bloomed 3.8 days earlier per decade. Moreover, it's predicted that the phenological process will start ever earlier at a temperature increase of 2 centigrade. For example, the growth period in temperature zone forest may come forward by 10 days. Reproductions of many flowering plants take place through pollinators such as insects, bees, and birds. Depending on the temperature increases, pollinators cannot adapt to the earlier flowering of plants. It adversely affects species that have symbiotic relationships. Another important area, invasive species. While some species are geographically affected negatively, climate change causes the spread of opportunistic species by creating positive effects on them. These invasive species power heat and they expand their range and increase their populations. Invasive species settle in the habitats they move into, which threaten local species diversity by reducing their habitat and ecosystem resistance. It makes these habitats more vulnerable to the effects of climate change. Invasive species distribution or geographical area is very important. Local species, particularly rare and endemic species. In Mediterranean, approximately 1,000 invasive species have migrated to the Mediterranean so far. In some areas in the Mediterranean, setting rays have caused up to 40% reduction in the number of native species. Another impact area, ecosystem diversity. Ecosystems serve as the Earth's carbon sinks. In the event that climate change continues at this rate, it is predicted that the carbon stored in all ecosystems and biomass, especially in the oceans, wetlands, and thunder, may be released into the atmosphere. In addition, it is expected that the increase in disasters such as insects and fungus, damages, storms, and fires will be more frequent at a temperature increases of 2 centigrade. Such disasters will deepen the reductions in carbon stocks in vegetative mass and soil. The impact of climate change has been seen intensely in terrestrial ecosystems in the last 30 years. Populations, ecosystems, and biomass are predicted to shift northward latitudinally with climate change. Vegetation belts in mountains areas are predicted to shift higher. Another example, zooplankton. Zooplankton has shifted the north by 1 kilometer and plankton ecosystems have been reorganized. As it can be seen, climate change causes serious impact on both aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems. Another impact we see functional diversity. Functional diversity include 4 categories: regulation, production, habitat, and information function. All categories occurred different subcategories. For example, regulation function, we dealt with things water quality, water supply, biological control, soil, production functions, raw material, food, medicine, habitat function, nursery, and refugium function. Information function is aesthetic, cultural, education, recreational function. All this category affect each other. If one category climate change affect directly one category or one category lost, and then affect another category directly. For example, 40% of insects are declining and 1/3 is threatened with extinction. In addition to its effects on the food network, the loss of insect biomass negatively impacts to crop pollination, diversity, waste disposal, and nutrition cycle. In the the result is the beginning of the 6th extinction process. What should be done to stop this rapid extinction? How can the downward trend in biodiversity levels be reversed? The answer to this question is adaptation and implementation of innovative approaches. One of green accounting, second integrate approaches based on ecology at the global level. What is green accounting? It is the description of the flow of goods and services provided by biodiversity and ecosystem capital, and is the determining and mapping of economic and ecological losses globally. The implementation of sustainable politics to determine the economic value of biodiversity and the integration of these policies to other areas will play an important role in reducing the impact of climate change. And it's okay. This will enable the local people, because if we protect biodiversity, local people is important, because general biodiversity use local people, and all policy include local people. Second, integrated approaches based on ecology at the global level. This innovation approaches is ecosystem-based adaptation. Ecosystem-based strategy that can be used in people's adaptation to climate change are generally based on the sustainable management, protection, and restoration of ecosystems. Although the ecosystem-based approach focused on climate change adaptation and the preservation and improvement of ecosystem service. It also takes into account the multiple social, economic, and cultural benefits of local communities. A fair and sustainable biodiversity management from the local to the global will play an important role to minimize the negative effects of climate change. As a result, the climate doesn't change, we must change. Thank you, listen to me.
Well, thank you, Ms. Demir. What is striking your presentation, green accounting. And may I pose a question about green accounting at Q&A session? Well, now we can pass the second panelist, Ms. Duygu Erten.
Thank you. I'm just trying to share my screen. Hello.
Hello, Duygu. She holds PhD engineer from Medipol University, and her presentation will be on the built-up environment, decarbonization efforts of construction sectors in line with the Green Deal and the new need for new circular to develop new skill sets to prepare us for green future, I think. Nice to see you again, Ms. Erten.
Thank you so much.
Floor is yours, please.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, part of these decarbonization efforts by Turkish government. And I would like to talk today on what is Green Deal bringing to built environment, and in academia, what do we need to push the transition, because there is a serious skill set gap in the industry. So there's so much to talk about, actually. I hope I can finish everything in 10 minutes. Everyone knows this by now. Everyone probably read over the 23-page Green Deal manual. It sets out one of the most ambitious roadmaps for an entire continent, outlining a series of key initiatives to bring greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050. And this is quite an ambitious goal, really, because we have to really reduce the net emissions at least 55% by 2030 compared to 1990 levels. And they want EU to be climate neutral. And even though we're not an EU country, we still align most of our directives with EU. And at the end of the day, we sell to EU. So whatever they talk in Green Deal has serious effects on Turkish economy. With rising focus on the building sector, for example, the renovation wave initiative of the European Green Deal, you're hearing probably a lot nowadays, in view of the full decarbonization by 2050, the built environment is strategically very important. The priority is the design and construction of new or retrofitting of existing buildings as zero emission, zero pollution, positive energy houses in sustainable green neighborhoods. Firstly, a transition in designing and constructing buildings to reduce their embodied emissions. Probably we didn't hear embodied emissions a lot up to now, but now embodied emissions are probably more important than any other emissions. And to increase the energy efficiency of the building operations, the same applies to retrofitting existing buildings to increase their efficiency. Secondly, a transition to energy positive buildings with sustainable and renewable energy technologies is needed. And what is industry's needs? First of all, human-centered design, construction and quality assurance processes involved in building and maintaining nearly zero energy building standards. These are challenges for not only for Europe, but anyone doing construction elsewhere. NESEP buildings require innovative design processes and of course new technologies based on integrated design approach facilitated by multidisciplinary teams. They are not like doing linear project management where things take place by time. This collaborative approach and integrative design and project management also is costly. Our industry needs more professionals to develop mutual understanding of each other's disciplines and to close the gaps that often arise between disciplinary and work boundaries. One significant barrier that hampers the development of NESEPs and effective renovations is the lack of adequate construction skills. It is vital to provide professionals with the skills required to achieve optimal NESEP construction and retrofitting in terms of quality, energy efficiency, and cost effectiveness. Improving the skills of middle and senior level building officials, as well as the various trade professionals in the area of sustainable energy efficient construction is therefore of key importance. Sustainable construction has been a mega trend, especially after the Paris Agreement. The explosion comes with an increasing need for construction professionals with knowledge in the various aspects of green building. Construction professionals now must be educated with a life cycle mentality. But how many of the available civil engineering architecture departments are offering these courses? Turkey has tremendous potential to scale up its climate action and could reduce emissions substantially by 2030 by acting in 3 sectors, but mine is a building sector, so I'm going to talk on building sector today. Let's look at the Turkish market. Since 2007, which we started hearing about green buildings, there are only 150 green building certifications received in Turkey. And our national system, ESTR, which our Ministry of Environment, Urbanization and Climate Change recently launched, still is in its pilot stage. So we don't have millions of green buildings yet, but we should. When we look at green accreditations, because LEED is very methodological and they provide the numbers, that's why I give detailed information. And plus BREM, the British system, EDGE, the World Bank system, the GMB, the German system, we have about 175, 180 accredited professionals in Turkey. And we don't have our national ESTR accredited professionals yet. So my goodness, 13 years passed and we're still at a very early stage. Look at the space types for certifications. Mostly, unfortunately, are commercial buildings. But green building movement really should start from government. We need more government buildings that's going to be retrofitted green. We need more government buildings that's going to be new construction coming with our national certification, for example. TOKİ, the mass social housing organization, they should come up with green specifications. If TOKİ becomes green, that means 500,000 housing per year becomes green. And here you are, reduction in CO2 reductions. By receiving 50 or 100 LEED certifications, we can't really reduce the carbon in the built environment. We are lucky as Turkish people because Turkey is going through an urban regeneration now. And if we use these opportunities smartly, and if we do green buildings, I'm not even saying NEZEP yet, because NEZEP will require, you know, full on-site renewables, which is expensive yet. So how are we going to reach 2030 and 2050 goals when we have millions of, you know, buildings waiting for retrofit? Okay, we do not have the necessary skill set yet for education for sustainable development, integration of climate change in school curricula, and local language training materials based on international standards. Unfortunately, most of this NEZEP, green, energy simulation, these are all in foreign languages, okay? Because I'm teaching also green buildings, construction, demolition waste, green engineering in Turkish, I realized when I teach in English and when I teach in Turkish, the difference of references. So, Green Deal goals for built environment need sustainability experts, knowledge of EPDs, eco-labels among all professionals, architects, engineers, procurement, and sales staff. We need high-quality consultants, not just paperwork pushers to get certifications. So we need courses in every university: sustainable design, sustainable construction, energy modeling, life cycle analysis, certifications, standards, and many others that I won't be able to finish. And on top of it, we have 3.6 million refugees, and we need housing for those people. Why not build sustainable housing when you're doing from the scratch? We all know that zero is the goal, but we also know that it's not easy to reach. Thank you for giving me a chance to express my opinions about how we're going to go, you know, go to zero goal until 2030 and 2050.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Erten. I think you finished your presentation.
Yes.
Okay.
Let me stop share.
Okay, thank you. Now we can pass the third panelist, Mr. Kenan Peker, professor from...
Yes, I am here.
Professor from Frat University. His presentation about capacity building for climate resiliency, he labeled as a TITA fair through the optimization of technology in tourism, aquaculture, forestry, agriculture, renewable energy, a zero waste model in Turkey. Am I summarized your
yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
thank
concept
you.
note? Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm not sure it is good scene available or not. Capacity building or climate change adaptation. We have optimization for the sectors, as you explained, technology, and my presentation contained current status, future initiatives of Turkey, development of climate change scope, best practices, and conclusion. I want to share some picture of awareness raising activity of climate change in Turkey. And as you can see, there is a water, river, and here there is a villages or houses. Since this is not suitable for building, but since they would like to be close to waters, they have houses here. Awareness raising activity of climate change in Turkey. You can see some picture. I'm gonna move very fast. We were collecting information from the villagers in the rural area for the people, youth, and also older people, what they think, what is their experience, and we have very good awareness raising activity on climate change in Turkey. When you ask anybody, they will say, okay, climate change is a very big problem. And also we have publication about climate change. You can see some picture of impact of climate change, water, and after the water is decreasing, you can see what happened in the soil. This is also blossom in the January, in the middle of winter, almond trees has blossomed, which is not good. And also you can see walnut tree, sunshine have very big damage. This is something I really would like to share, good practices of climate change adaptation. You can see here, trees are vertical grow, but when you have horizontal, they are growing very fast due to the climate change. And we have wild variety, which is climate change resistance. We have Gondelia, which is very, very resistant for climate change in Turkey. This is wild plant for the adaptation. I'm gonna move very fast. And when we doing this study, and we came out what is going to be solution for the climate change adaptation. We have very good species, wild rootstock actually. They are climate resistance very good. We call them World Heritage of Climate Change Adaptation in Turkey. And when you get these wild rootstock, or you can have fruit in a year, as you can see. So now I'm gonna have my presentation, capacity building of climate change adaptation as a new approach. First, we can talk about analytical thinking of climate change problem, natural resource, climate, and biopower. Climate change has been negatively affecting ecosystem, organism, tissues, and genome molecules, which leads people to suffer from the poverty. So to cope with climate problem, using renewable resource, reducing consumption, recycling, reuse of wastes are some good practices. But we can say those practices are not strong, sustainable, and balanced growth. That's why we need to discuss more about the climate change. The optimization of technology, tourism, aquaculture, forest, agriculture, and renewable energy, which is stand for of TT-FAIR, is very good optimization model we can call a zero waste model for climate change. So my objective, the world global leaders have been giving valuable speech on climate change in Glasgow. I wish I were there to do something about the climate change instead of just talking about it. I believe what the global leader will do in the next 3 to 5 years will determine the future of humanity. We are not gonna have more time. We don't have more time. The next 3 to 5 years will determine the future of humanity. Of course, we should have mission, vision, target, aims, principles, strategies, method, accepted result, impact of activities, and result as 11 pillars of climate change management for mitigation, adaptation, resilience, and technology management. But we should do something as soon as possible. Temperature is increasing, rain is decreasing day by day, at least in the Middle East, which is including our country too. The impact of climate change on the land management is an essential issue for security and sustainability. As an agricultural economist, I have been researching ways to tackle climate change problem for agriculture and agribusiness since 2006. The material for this study is actually my experience we got from the IPCC project in 2006 and 2008, and my experience with the EGMIC project, and my experience with the Asian Productivity Organization. They are all international organizations. They have been doing very good job for climate change adaptation. So material for this presentation collected from there. Also, my university recently, we complete a project, EU-funded project, capacity building in climate change adaptation. So method for this study is life cycle design, farming system, industrial ecology, and life cycle optimization. When we look at the Turkey, the impact of climate change is different, and implementation of climate change adaptation also are different. We are doing very good job actually. The history of climate change impact. In 1940s, we collected data for the 1940s, what was in the past, in 1960s and 1970s, 1980s. Turkey got started in 1960s to have forests or forestation, more forest area instead of cultivation area. They employ 1% of rural population in the forest protection job. In 1980s, the source of water has been very big problem. Main challenges and principal trends of Turkey provides a good example of impact of climate change. The building climate resilience in Turkey. We have drought centers in the middle Anatolia region and also irrigation program. The production pattern has been changed due to the irrigation, water consumption, and so, of course, there are good practices such as modern irrigation systems, zero tillages, precision technology, environmental friendly of use land in Turkey. Future initiatives, we must focus on system management for climate change. System management, not national. It must be for all of the world, international. So the development scope and opportunity of climate change mitigation, adaptation, resilient, and technology development. I would like to highlight some remarkable proposals for climate change adaptation in the world as follows. First of all, we must follow the process of contact, communication, collaboration, corporate responsibility, conservation, creativity, and commercialization as inclusive innovation of climate change adaptation in the world.
Professor,
this is for networking.
Professor,
yes.
Kindly remind you the time that we are consuming the time. So could you wrap up your presentation?
Of course, I'm gonna wrap up.
Okay, thank you.
Zero waste circular economy is very good opportunity. And for example, plant roots stock of climate change are very good source of climate change adaptation. We explore 18 wild plant rot stock in just one region of Turkey. The optimization of technology, tourism, agriculture, forestry, aquaculture, renewable energy is the zero waste model for climate change. We recommend this model. We have detail for this model, but since we don't have time, I'm gonna wrap up my presentation. This is the detail of the model. We how can I say, I have a dream to see optimization of T-FAIR system in every corner of the world, which is very good system for the climate change adaptation. I would like to thank you for everybody.
We thank to you. As the last panelist, I would like to present Turkey's efforts in mainstreaming the global agendas, particularly climate change, into urban development frameworks and spatial plans in an integrated ways, which those efforts dated back to the 9th National Development Plan period of Turkey, and still constitutes basis for the local climate actions at municipal levels. I would like to also underline the role of spatial planning with various scales and types of plans in the localization of climate change ambitions and Turkey's integrated approach in this regard. My intention to explain also how Turkey stimulates the urban development frameworks and spatial plans, those implemented global agendas such as 2030 Agenda, SDGs, Paris Climate Agreement, Habitat New Urban Agenda, NUAM, how they implement at local levels in an integrated way between 2009 and 2020 first. But as we have a limited time, I will not extend my my presentation and try to briefly underline the importance of the spatial plans and how spatial plans play a key role in local implementations of the global agenda. When we look at the last decade, we all witnessed the experienced at least one of the severe impacts of climate change in the form of extensive wildfires, extreme weather events, floods, droughts, heat waves, hurricanes, together with the COVID-19 globally we recently experienced all over the world. So depending on their specific objectives, most of the cities have started to include wider aspects such as synergies or trades-off with other urban policies, such as water management, biodiversity, climate change, mitigation and disaster reductions. And our panel actually balancedly constructed two participant panelists mentioned about the nature side, and Ms. Erten and I, from the built-up environment, we underlined the impacts of climate change. So we, as I said before, we experienced extreme weather events, particularly at the settled areas, but also the nature. I'm not undermining the nature, the impacts of on the nature. So the earth, our home, and the earth mother, we call it. So we need to care our planet by really decreasing the emissions, but also we should protect our lives And the other species lives in our homes and the other habitats of this species. So we live together in this earth. And as far as I remember, in fourth IPCC report, long before Paris Climate Agreement in 2010, fourth assessment report, IPCC, indicates stated that the impacts of climate change are already evident around the world, and even the most stringent mitigation efforts cannot avoid further impacts of climate change in the next few decades. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the middle of the mentioned next decade, and we experienced extreme events, weather events. So we mentioned about the negative impacts on our lives and on our earth. Unfortunately, 3 months ago, IPCC's sixth assessment report on physical science also stated that reiterated the urgency, even greater certainty that human-induced climate change is now happening faster and more intensely than predicted. So UN Secretary General called urgent action by reinforcing critical importance of multi-level collaboration in tackling the climate crisis, and stated that no city, no region, or no nation can continue in business as usual mode, and we must be acting more state of emergency we are currently in. So we should balance our implementation of mitigation and adaptation measures and strategies in an integrated manner at local level, and also supporting manner to each other, because we don't have a luxury of time to separate those measures and strategies from each other, because we need to keep alive 1.5 by reducing emissions, but also we have to sustain our lives and step up our resiliencies against already occurred negative impacts and disasters. So I plan to explain Turkish spatial planning system and why spatial plans have a critical importance. So I really briefly mentioned and then finalized my presentation, because we really reached our time limits. Spatial plans vary in their scopes, contents, and design parameters when addressing the climate concerns. Scales have critical importance because it determines the tools and strategies that we want to intervene, the measures, or integrate the parameters into contextual analysis or synthesis of the places. When we design, when we construct, when we build our living and working environment and settled environment. Strategic spatial plans, for example, are more cross-sectoral frameworks and quite normative, and put the rules of the place at principal levels, and particularly important to implement in defining green infrastructures and protected areas at territorial level, at national level, because the scales is too big, or sinking areas. On the other hand, zoning plans, which but unfortunately, in a LED ekran screen and it doesn't work well. Zoning plans also very important from the climate measures because it's contain site patterns and building codes, which is important because it put the principles of the building layouts, technical specification about infrastructure, ventilation, exposure, direction of sun, gardens, courtyards, breathing spaces. It defines the design standards, construction standards, specifications at a human scale. So those are quite effective tools to design buildings and in energy efficient, designing co-generative infrastructures at building or city level. So zoning plans have a major role in the reduction in emissions. Thank you to listen us. Unfortunately, we we cannot pass to the Q&A sessions. We reach our limits. So I would like to ask our other panelists if they have questions and their presentations. No? Is it possible to reconnect our panelists? Because I would like to say goodbye and present my thanks, special thanks, because in Turkey, very late. Is it possible? They are still online?
Yeah, we are here.
Okay.
We're here.
Sorry. So it is too late. I know in Turkey. So thank you, really thank you, your presentations. And so you contributed our events. Hope next days, climate change, our national policy now, and I'm sure we will work together, discuss more and further elaborate the settled environment or natural environment from the impacts and to the reductions of the emissions and the step up our resiliencies. So we have more issues to discuss in next years and next days. Thank you again, your contributions. So goodbye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.